On to our final session. So we're going to welcome Morag Shaw to join us. Morag, good evening, how are you?
I'm good. I'm good. Yeah, just
Good.
hanging together. It's
I
a
know
lovely sunny day today, so it's been a wee surprise.
I know, a lovely sunny day as we approach the end of, well, for most of us,
Yeah.
the end of term and the countdown, and all SK marking's nearly finished.
Well, we are finished, so I'm very, very happy about that. I could tell you, very happy.
Very happy.
It was a long time coming. It seemed to go on for quite a while, but we're finished. All
I
done.
know.
We even have a grade boundary now, so yeah, done and
Brilliant.
dusted.
So now
Yeah,
it's
just a report to write now.
just waiting for the whatever of August when we see the results.
Yes,
So,
well, hopefully they'll be good, and they're pretty solid, you know. Yeah,
good.
yeah, pretty
So
solid. Yeah.
and we start the
Good.
cycle. We start the cycle again, with most of us having
Yeah, well, I
moved
know.
on.
Yeah, dates for appeals are already in. So I've got the date on my calendar. Oh, gosh.
Most of us will have started our new timetables, our new national and higher classes, and probably
Yeah.
not thinking about prelims just yet. But I think it's
No, but
a
it's
good
always
time.
it's a little bit early, but it's always good to keep it in mind and sort of think about it
I know
when
it.
you've got a little bit of headspace
I know.
without all the demands of everything else going on. Yeah,
I
so it's
know.
nice. It's good to think about it early.
Yeah, it's
Maybe
one thing
not this early, but
I've never written a full prelim, so I'm going to definitely be taking lots from this about how we go about it. So I think all we need to do is get your slides loaded up. I think Brendan's just doing some stuff in the background, and you're good to go.
yeah, they're
So
very unsophisticated. Yeah, I don't think I'll be teaching all those experienced teachers very much, or they'll not be learning very much new. I think an awful lot of this is kind of common sense, but I guess there's not everyone's quite as long in the tooth as I am, so maybe there's something in there. Been around for quite a wee while, so loads of experience in the classroom, in the PT as PT in the department, but also a lot of knowledge gained through being PA and seeing appeals come in exceptional circumstances. So that's kind of where I'm planning to go again. So yeah, ready to make a start with. I'll go ahead.
Yep, just go for it.
Okay, so here we are. Lovely to be with you all. Writing prelim papers for NQ Computing Science. And I think the first thing we should really think about is why we're bothering. You know, why do we bother writing prelim papers? Why do we have prelim papers? Actually, never mind writing them. And I think it's important that we think about also how we use them once we do have them. So once we have this prelim paper, whether we write it ourselves, some people buy them in commercially. We really should. One of the things that we look for as an exam team when we're looking at evidence is we need to be confident that what we're looking at has been completed under the same conditions as the final exam. So exam conditions. It needs to be very carefully aligned with the course specifications, and I'll come back to that in a little moment, and a lot more detail about that. That is the biggest issue that we see as an examining team. The prelim should present students with a chance to think about their progress and to make informed, I guess, decisions about their future within the subject. It helps them see how to prepare for the upcoming exam. Although it depends when you do your prelims, but it can be maybe still a couple of months away. So there's an opportunity to refine and make those improvements. It gives us as teachers really useful feedback. Very, very important summative feedback that we can use to help formulate estimate grades. Shouldn't be the only thing we take into consideration in estimate grades, but it's a really important factor in making those choices and decisions. It provides useful summative feedback for parents and carers. And what I often found was that was a feedback that they most easily could understand and get their head around. As much as I could talk about lots of other things that go on in the class and strengths and development needs, parents, it always came down to the nitty gritty. So how did they go on in the prelim? But another thing to think about is the evidence that you may need to present to SQA should you have a candidate who has to apply through the exceptional circumstances route or later on through the appeals route. And I guess the one that's the most serious there is the exceptional circumstances. We just finished that, in fact, at the weekend there. Exceptional circumstances are used for a candidate where perhaps they were ill on the day of the exam, or they were unable to submit coursework, or there's been some incident happen during the exam, or some incident happened, maybe personal circumstances just before the exam, and those have impacted on their performance, or potentially impacted. So the centre has to present prelim evidence. The project usually has already been submitted, and in our case has already been marked. But the prelim evidence is absolutely critical. So, and that's really possibly the only evidence if the candidate is unable to sit the exam that we have of, as examiners, we've never met the candidate, we don't know them, and it's the only way we can make a judgment, a fair judgment on their ability within the subject. So the prelim is actually really important, and how it's structured is also very, very important. I mentioned matching the specification. It needs to match the specification in several different ways. So SQA have got the 3 course specifications, N5, higher and advanced higher. And across, it's not all gathered in one place. You have to go in and look for them across different pages of the documents. I've actually put together a couple of the documents that we will make available on STACS website. I think Brendan will keep us up to date with all of that, but there's a couple of documents where I have pulled everything together for everyone, and it maybe makes it a little bit easier, but this slide here gives you a quick summary. So for N5, most teachers will know it's a 1 hour 30 exam, and the prelim should reflect that. It's a total of 80 marks. There are 3 sections, except I've already done a copy paste, and it says section 1, section 2, section 3. There you go, section 1, section 2, and section 2. The third row should say 3. Section 1 is mandatory at all levels. Section 2 or section 3 is completed by the candidate, so they're making a choice in the exam to do the database option or the web option. Centres, when that was introduced as a COVID modification, it was then retained in the first presentation year was 2024. So that's now how we're moving things forward, that we will, for the foreseeable future, have that optionality within all our question papers. Centres are encouraged to teach the 3 options, but under exam conditions, candidates only have to show and demonstrate knowledge and understanding skills up to the mandatory software development and computer systems for N5 and higher, and either the optional database or optional web unit. At advanced higher, it's really important that teachers remember that there's integration within all 3 units. So in software development, there is mandatory integration with database, and that has been there. It's been there since the course started, since NQ Computing Science came along at advanced higher level, and it's been there throughout the modifications. It's never gone away. Within the section 2 database, there's now a requirement, a mandatory integration, 2 marks worth of integration with web content. And similarly, that's reflected in the web section 3. There's a mandatory integration for candidates at advanced higher with database. And that's all very clearly outlined within the specification for the course. When we're building prelim papers and creating them, we need to keep at whatever level it is you're working at. We're needing to think about the mark balance and how we do that. And there's a little bit more detail that's often overlooked, and that is about the actual mark allocation. Buried very deep in this course specifications, there is a table in each of them telling teachers, candidates, anyone who wants to read the document, because it's an open public document, how the marks are allocated for the different skills within the course. So our course is primarily analysis, design, implementation, testing, and evaluating computing solutions, be they software development ones, database ones, web ones, or advanced higher integrated ones. And of course, the N5 and higher, we've also got computer systems in there. And the marks, the allocation of marks is clearly defined within the specifications. And one of the biggest issues we see as an advanced higher exam team when we're looking at prelim papers submitted by centres is often the imbalance of questions. We often see predominantly question papers that are predominantly in implementation, and when you actually look at the mark allocation, so for example, this is N5 and higher, we're looking at around about 30 marks in the question paper for design and 25 marks for implementation. So we're looking, and that's because the assignment is the flip side of that. The assignment has many, many more marks for implementation than it has for design. So the question paper has to balance that out. And that's often an issue when you're looking at question papers. It's actually really difficult to come up with design questions, so it's quite a challenge. At advanced higher, the breakdown is similar, but different. At advanced higher, again, the design marks, in fact, the design marks are flipped the other way. It's around about 20 marks we'd be looking for in a question paper, as opposed to 24 implementation. So they're not quite equal, but they're very, very similar. And of course, there's no computer systems there. What is, just as a reminder, what is important in an advanced higher question paper now is that there's those two marks of integration in both of the optional sections. Okay, so that's about the different types of content. Another requirement of all the prelim papers and question papers that we produce as a team is the question demand. Each question paper has a mixture of questions. And SQE are particularly interested in the C mark questions and the A mark questions, and that's because we set a grade boundary for a C, we set a grade boundary for an A, and we set a grade boundary for an upper A. The B boundary is halfway between the A and the C. We don't set a grade boundary for B. It's just is calculated automatically. So SQA as an organisation are interested in the C boundaries and the A boundaries, and therefore as question paper writers we are tasked with making sure that we have got 50% of the question paper is targeted at C marks, 30% in the next slide you'll see is targeted at A. So what makes a C mark question? A C mark question, sure, it's one of those questions that doesn't necessarily run to part G and H and so on and so on. They're usually quite familiar contexts. There's nothing very complex about them. Teachers will recognise a C question when you see a C question. They're very short, they're very focused, they're very direct. There's not a lot of problem solving within them. And 50% of the question paper should be at C level, as opposed to your A-level questions. And your A-level questions, there should be about 30% of your question paper. So these are the ones that are much more challenging, that as experienced exam writers, we feel when we have to mark up which our questions are C questions and which ones are A questions. The ones that we mark up as A are the ones that we think only the A candidates will achieve. So not every candidate will achieve a mark in that question or full marks in that question, but the expectation is that the very high attaining candidates will be attaining marks in those questions. They are more challenging. They are usually context-based, so it's one of those. Another way to spot them is they're longer. There's several parts to the question. It breaks down as a stem, and the stem is continued. The theme continues. So there are multiple parts. The responses required are often longer, more detailed, a lot more descriptive, or in our subject, there's a lot more problem solving within those. So maybe that's when in higher, for example, you would be expect to see things like a design of an algorithm required, or a slight chunk of coding required, more than a one-line piece of code. There's often, certainly at advanced high level, there's often an opportunity to integrate skills and demonstrate deeper knowledge and understanding by providing explanations rather than simple state and describe. And that should be 30% of the exam. And combined with those two factors, the demand that we're thinking about just now, combined with the split of content across the different skills of analysis, design, implementation, testing, and evaluation, those two factors play off against one another, and trying to get the balance is actually very, very difficult. And it's one of the things that we do have to look at when we're looking at appeal evidence that comes in. And last weekend, when we were looking at exceptional circumstances evidence. What we do as an exam team, or one of the things I do, the PA certainly has to do, is to track where all our different content is coming from, so that I make sure I keep a running total of where our marks are, and I can see very quickly where I've got gaps, where I haven't covered content, where I'm duplicating content, that sort of thing. So I use sophisticated Excel. I use Excel. We keep track of each question. So question 1A, and this analysis here is actually of a higher prelim paper, which I made from scratch, which will be available to download with all of the other documentation that comes with it, and is valid. It matches this requirements, it matches the demand, it's got all the different content, all of those things. And to make sure, when I was writing the paper over the weekend, I was sitting tracking where it was. So question 1A is computer systems, 2 bits, 1 mark, and it's 1 C mark. Question 1, having to look very closely, question 1B is a 2-mark computer systems question, and they're both 2 C marks. And you unfortunately have hidden this, but as you go down, not all the questions transfer over to C marks. Some of them split, and maybe there's 1 A mark question in it. Or in some of your bigger questions, when there's maybe 6 marks available, maybe I've only got 3 of those as an A. But maybe there's a really straightforward mark in there, and I've marked 1 of those 6 against a C. So you get a feel for it when you look for the. I use a spreadsheet when we're sitting as an exam team writing question papers. I sit after we've had a discussion of all the questions. I sit and then keep a tally of the ones. Where are we? What do we need to do? And you can see on the right hand side here that I can see my totals, and I know if I'm too many of one or too few of another. An analysis grid. There you go. Marking instructions. For many teachers in very small departments, if you're on your own and you're the sole teacher, you might not see the importance of committing the marking instructions to a bit of paper until it comes to submitting an appeal. Or the worst case scenario, it's a candidate unfortunately isn't able to sit the exam and you've got to submit something. So it's always good to do it at the time rather than after the event and try and scrabble about thinking, what did I mark this? How did I mark that? You're much better to do it at the time. So running in parlour, when I set the writers a task and say, okay, I want you to write me a question on object-oriented, I also ask them, as you're doing it, could you go along and put all the answers in as well, so that we can, when we sit to look at the question, we can see how those 4 marks have been allocated. Have they been allocated fairly, appropriately, that sort of thing. One important thing to remember in the marking instructions, particularly for higher and advanced higher, is we can't, as writers, you can't award a mark for content at a lower level. So put that into context. In advanced higher, for example, in database work, I can't award marks for the use of an aggregate function because that's a higher skill. I can only award marks in advanced higher for advanced higher skills, so the demonstration of advanced higher skills. And that makes it very difficult in programming, particularly in software development, because, for example, fixed loops are taught at N5. I can't award marks for fixed loops, but I need a fixed loop to do a sort. So it's actually very, very difficult. So the marking instructions are actually important. Obviously, the correct answers are there. We, as exam teams, usually publish the answer, certainly at advanced higher, I always do it, publish the answers using SQL reference language. Within your own department, you may wish to keep all implementation within the language that you use. That's fine. That's okay. And we, as exam teams, are happy to see that. It makes not one jot of difference to us whether you're using the reference language as your sample answers or whether you're using your own language. Is BOD acceptable marking for the prelim? BOD. Go on, tell me. Someone will need to explain. Yeah, good. someone will get back to me on that one. Yeah, so make sure the correct answers are there. Explain, show, state somehow how you're allocating the marks, particularly if there's something like 4 marks, 3 marks, how are you allocating? Award 1 mark for this or 2 marks for that. Explain how you're doing it, because another factor that we do look at, it sounds really painful when we're sitting doing appeals, when we're doing exceptional circumstances, do we actually look at the answers the candidates write? Yes, we do. And we look at the marking instructions and we check that there is actually consistency and that the marking instructions have been applied appropriately. So we do that checking. And in larger departments where there's more than one member of staff, it's absolutely vital. You need marking instructions so that everyone's applying the same standards. And of course, within a bigger department, you would probably want to cross-mark as well, just to make sure that everything was okay. I'll catch up a little bit on comments. What is BOD? Okay. So have I missed anything? Right, so yeah, marking instructions need to be there. I've lost my place. There we go. Yeah, okay, I'll come back to that. I will pick up that question about the buying about buying the prelim papers in a little moment. So we've now got a prelim paper that's valid because it follows the specification in terms of demand, in terms of content. It's got the correct split of marks, it's been done under exam conditions, all of the above, and you've now got it marked, and it's now gone back to pupils, and it's really important that you're following it through. And I'm now teaching my grand to really suck eggs, because I'm sure this is things that all the good teachers in computer science are doing all the time, but we certainly used to do it. My third task, prelim paper, marking instructions, and then it's actually quite quick to do the review once you've got a grid in place. You just go down, so that when we're going over the prelims, we used to give the kids a review paper and ask them to record their marks, and we'd give them sort of 10, 15 minutes at the end to actually sort of go down and almost traffic light it if you think it's appropriate, somehow write in a level of confidence. What do you think about that? Where's your areas of development? Where did they see their areas of development and following it up with the next steps? And teachers would add a comment at the bottom, and that went home so parents could, join in as well. Yeah, and where they were fully aware of what was going on. So question paper review at the end we found very useful, especially that chance to sit down and talk to the kids, because it then informed us a little bit about where we were heading with revision for final exam, and what we needed to maybe do a little bit more of, or where we could say, right, I don't actually need to do that at all, because they've actually really got that. They've totally nailed that one. So question paper review was actually really useful. And again, this question paper review you can see in front of you is the one that matches the higher prelim paper that I've made available for Brendan to upload once they work out how to upload it. Because the other thing is, of course, the question with the prelim papers is we can't put them on a public open site, because then kids can get access to them, and we can't then accept it as SQA evidence for appeals or exceptional circumstances. Regulations and tape and all the rest, red tape and all the rest of it. Let me take on some of these questions at the moment. So somebody's going to get back to us with BOD. Buying the prelim paper given advantage to the appeal process. Not necessarily, no. Generally speaking, no, it doesn't give any advantage whatsoever. We are quite happy to see, in fact, when we see a unique prelim paper, something that's not commercial, it's actually nice to think that the staff, the department, the teachers actually taking time to and that show that understanding of the course structure and the assessment structure. Buying in commercial ones gives no advantage whatsoever. And in actual fact, I often, as a teacher, as a PT, I would buy in commercial papers and then rewrite them because I'm too critical of what was already there. So yeah, I would just rewrite them. Sometimes I would use them for ideas, and I'll come back to that about where you get your ideas from and all that sort of thing. But I would use them for ideas and then write valid questions on top of them. But I would generally say no, it doesn't give any advantage buying a commercial one. Benefit of doubt, okay, benefit of doubt marking for prelim. benefit of doubt. Is it an acceptable way to mark a paper? Generally speaking, I would say no. Generally what I would do when I was marking prelim papers is I would just mark, and if it's not right, it's not right. Maybe once on one or two weird occasions, I would maybe give a benefit of doubt, but I would generally say no. And that the prelim isn't the. And one thing I think teachers often feel almost obliged to is teach to a prelim, which is always bad because you can see it through the class results, and also try and encourage pupils that getting a high mark is important. It's not necessarily the best learning experience. I think it's a more appropriate learning experience to say, no, you were wrong on that occasion, and then sit with a review and talk to them about why it was wrong and why they were near, but they weren't there. So I would generally say avoid benefit of doubt, except for those one or two. We have difficulty at advanced higher. So if you've looked at any of the advanced higher papers, the last question in section 1 is always a big problem solving question where it's an unseen problem and we're asking the candidates to come up with a solution for something that they've probably never thought about before. So it's really demanding, very high order, and we come up. It's wonderful reading all their solutions, but it's really difficult to mark. But the bottom line is we have to mark it and we have to be consistent, and we have to be consistent across 700 candidates. So we can't use benefit of doubt. And I would therefore say for your prelim, even though you've only got one candidate or 20 candidates or 40 candidates or 6, benefit of doubt, I would avoid it. Sorry, I've already answered them. I should have read that. So coming back to where we are, priorities when you're making a paper. What I always get with the exam team is we start with the big questions, the A questions. Start with those big long ones. So in each topic, start with your big, like your software development, start with your 2 big software development questions, start with your big web question, start with your big database question, whichever your optional topic is, start with those ones. And then think about where it's going to go. You can use SQA past papers, not in their entirety. And I hinted at that earlier when I said that because they're in public domain, we cannot accept as evidence anything that is an entire paper. It's rejected straight away. So you can take questions from a series of papers, a couple of past papers. You could take them from it and say that I want to use that question. You could take the STEM. In database, you could take the data tables, for example, so because there's a lot of work has to go into that. So you could take part of a question, a software development question in its entirety, a big long one, but not the whole paper. And of course, alternatively, you can be totally creative. Take inspiration from national events that are going on, like there's a certain football competition going on, there's a certain international sporting competition going on in the summer of 2024 in Paris. Take advantage of those and build questions around them. There's lots of leeway for doing that sort of thing. Your easier C questions you will find it easy to fit those in, so don't be tempted to start with C's. Always start with the big long ones. And by the way, a big long one doesn't always have to be full of A's. It could have some A's, but it's bound to have C's in it as well. Do keep track of where you are. Use that analysis grid, something like that, so that you can keep track of how many marks you've allocated, where you've allocated the mark, what type of mark is it? Is it a design mark as opposed to a testing mark? You need to keep a track of all of those things, and don't forget to create a set of marking instructions. So I've come to the end of everything I was going to say, and now I can answer the questions, which I haven't already answered. I don't got any more questions. I've answered them all. I speak too fast as well. So anyone from the STACS team or questions to ask?
I think as you said, you've answered all the questions that have been in, and I think it's just that reminder of what an exam paper looks like is really really useful. And I think that one thing you talk about the feedback, I always give my students feedback, but they always get that thing off. As you're talking it through, you can see they're not actually listening to what I'm saying because they've got that result on the bit of paper. So what I did with my higher class this year is I photocopied the prelim, gave them the photocopy unmarked.
Okay, yes, to go through it,
So they had to listen to the feedback to work out where they got the marks.
Yes.
And then I gave them my mark copy, and that's when we had the bit of debate of why have you given me the mark or not given me the mark. But
I used to give them and it was easier. It's okay at advanced higher, but I used to give them the question paper back without their answer grids. So that they actually were listening to me as I was going through, particularly those problem-solving questions, those deeper ones when they're just like zoned out. I would give them just the question. It's harder now because they've got the right on papers and no one's got the budget to have two copies for every candidate. So that's a little bit harder, keeping their attention as you're doing it, because all they want to do is get to the bottom of it. So they open it up, they've got the mark straight away. Yes.
All positive feedback in the chat, as we can see. And I think it's just that clarity around the process of looking at all the different components of how to pull it together. And as you've made clear, it's not an easy process.
It's not an easy process, no, and don't get us wrong, we don't sit down and say, right, from the outset, you come up with a question and you're sitting going, okay, I'm going to write a question on the Olympics, so that'll lend itself to database with web, and you got all these things. So I'm going to write a question on that. I'm going to do this. And you go off, and you don't sit and go, I'm going to write 2 marks of evaluation. We would do that after the big question, and we've got gaps. Like if we've got that and say, right, okay, so now I'm missing evaluation, or I've got no mod in if it's high or something. I'm missing it at that point, rather than starting saying, trying to fit everybody into a box. I'll just give, as PA, I'll just give a topic to be that you go off and do an OO question, you go off and do that, that sort of thing. And then when everybody brings it back to the table, we'll sit and analyse. So where's our gaps, where's our duplication, strip it back, and then fit in the C's roundabout. But it's not easy, and it's my job is I get the boring job of doing the tally marks and where everybody is and that sort of thing. Yeah. So hopefully it's useful. And what I've passed to Brendan is a full higher paper with marking instructions, with an analysis grid, and with a review. So I did it for higher, so there's a higher one there.
Well, maybe the stat as a group, people in STACS, we might even try the same for a National 5 one. And then we've got that STACS prelim as an alternative that people can use.
Exactly. And there's talent within the team of STACS, so there's loads of talent around. So absolutely, yeah.
Excellent.
So hopefully that was useful for somebody.
I think it was definitely useful.
I think we're getting a lot of comments in the chat about demystifying the black box, and certainly starting as a probationer, I think it was great to, in less than half an hour, have the actual truth on all of those massive documents that are publicly available that you have to read through and then remember. So that's absolutely great. And great idea, Ian, about like making a STACS prelim, because when we've got a bigger team, certainly bigger than Pennycook High School, when it's going to be just me. So
there's always a lot of chat and STACS about computing teachers in particular, always having to reinvent the wheel and do things again and again. But actually, we don't have to do that. We've got a huge body of knowledge and experience and talent, so we should make use of it and share that workload and come up with valid question papers and a wee body of them that then allows people to sort of do the best for our candidates, which is all we want, really.
Absolutely. Sounds incredibly exciting. And Morag also having the example, like the full higher example of how to, and the story of how this is built in real life. It's great. Ian, your idea is being picked up, going up into something new.
Oh, I imagine the connected group will be going off once we're all finished here.
They were starting a question.
That's the purpose of the connected spaces, so that we can all get together and start those conversations about prelims and events and resources and all stuff like that. And as Anna has popped into the chat, it'll lighten the load, for small departments. It's not feasible to write a prelim every single year or every couple of years. So So, yeah.
No, we used to get together as an authority and try and do it, and it worked for a couple of years, but then somebody needs to sustain it. And it was always me. I just felt like the nag all the time, the big dragon. So it's quite nice if there's another dragon. Brendan could be the dragon, and then I can just be creative.
Yeah. No, I think
it's good though. It's good that we share.
Yes, I think that's one of the best things about STACS is that we are all for sharing. And I would encourage, and we know the Computing Science Scotland Google Drive as well. People put stuff up, and we're just share it. Somebody will use it, and
absolutely.
It'll benefit the kids, and that's ultimately
what it's all about, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah, it'll benefit teachers as well, because we're not then having to
reinvent that wheel.
It's so much easier to tweak something and make it more personalize it than it is to start from scratch.
Yep.
Much easier to do it that way. So yeah, good.
Yep. Well, thank you very much, Morag.
No problem. Been good to be part of it, and
I know.
Hopefully it's been useful.
Yeah, definitely.
Enjoyed it. Yeah,
it's definitely been useful. Definitely.
Okay, no bother. Nice to meet you.
Thank you very much. And Nicole, I think that brings us to the end of day one.
Yeah, it does bring us to the end of day one. Such a pity. I wanted to stay on another hour or something. Anyway, really good. And should I just take this absolutely will lighten the load comment from Anna in the chat to say, look at us, we're using technology, we're leading the way and using YouTube and using our new brand social network, STACS Connected. Can I call it a social network? Is it a social network?
I think it is a social network. It's a community of computing science teachers.
Exactly. I'm sure
there's a collective noun for computing scientists, but I don't know what it is.
Maybe we'll see. But we've got our own special space, and look at us. And we're gonna be able to do so much more all together, I guess. So yes, it's the end of day one. Thank you very much to everyone that has been with us on YouTube all together live, and also thank you everyone for seeing the recordings. If you're gonna see the recordings instead of being here live, the recordings are gonna be on the STACS Connected, and I think on the STACS website as well. Is that right, Ian? Yes.
Yeah, I think so. I think Brendan will work his magic in the background, and they'll be posted everywhere.
They'll be posted everywhere, together with all the links and probably the slides, with all the resources. And we are gonna be back tomorrow, Tuesday, and also on Wednesday. We've got the Euros going on. We've got lots of things going on, but stay with us. And we're much more fun. I think we are.
Excellent. So thanks very much, folks, and good night, and we'll see you at another STACS event soon.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. Lovely to be with everyone.